Targeting Planned Parenthood, the Department of Justice launches an investigation into the abortion giant. We have the details. Further fallout. Pro-life Congressman Trent Franks of Arizona will resign in yet another scandal involving female staffers. We'll tell you why. Full of grace. Pope Francis honors Mary on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. And a recipe for success. We talked to a Catholic priest who was a contestant on ABC's The Great American Baking Show. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, December 8th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsbee in for Lauren Ashburn. The Department of Justice launches an investigation into Planned Parenthood. We've learned the agency is gathering documents about the abortion provider's handling of baby body parts. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. President Trump promised on the campaign trail he would defund Planned Parenthood if it continues to perform abortions. That hasn't happened yet, but tonight we know the country's largest abortion provider is facing federal scrutiny.
We obtained a letter signed by Assistant Attorney General Stephen Boyd. It's addressed to Senators Charles Grassley and Dianne Feinstein, who lead the Senate Judiciary Committee. That panel previously investigated Planned Parenthood for the alleged sale of baby body parts. The probe was sparked by undercover videos released by the Center for Medical Progress, a pro-life investigative group.
It shows that Planned Parenthood's defense is totally debunked. Planned Parenthood is totally guilty for taking money in exchange for baby body parts.
The pro-life lobby group Susan B. Anthony list calls it, quote, a major turning point in the battle to hold the nation's largest abortion business accountable. SBA list President Marjorie Dannenfelser adds, we anticipate that this investigation will only underscore the urgent need to redirect $500 million in annual taxpayer funding away from the abortion giant.
House and Senate committees both referred Planned Parenthood to prosecutors for possible criminal charges, alleging it was profiting from the sale of aborted baby parts. At this time, Planned Parenthood is not responding to the DOJ investigation, but they have previously denied the claims made against them. It's not clear how long the federal investigation will take. Wyatt.
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. And we will talk more about the Planned Parenthood investigation coming up a little later in the show with Terry Shilling from the American Principles Project. The House and Senate approve a 2-week continuing resolution that avoids a government shutdown.
On this vote, the yeas are 81, the nays are 14. The joint resolution is passed.
The measure, approved last night, will keep federal agencies operating through December 22nd. Money for government programs was set to run out at midnight Friday if Congress didn't authorize more resources. The House Ethics Committee clears embattled Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes. The California Republican was accused of disclosing classified information to the Trump White House. The panel announced Thursday any information Nunes revealed was not classified. The co-chair of the Congressional Pro-Life Caucus will resign. Republican Representative Trent Franks of Arizona reveals he discussed surrogacy with 2 female staffers. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi joins us with more. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Wyatt. Franks is the 3rd lawmaker this week to announce plans to resign. But this case is not like the others. It comes down to allegedly asking female staff members to be surrogate mothers for his family. Franks and his wife of 37 years are parents of twins born through surrogacy several years ago.
8-term Congressman Trent Franks will resign January 31st. In a statement, he says he deeply regrets causing distress by talking about surrogacy with 2 staffers, writing, I do want to take full and personal responsibility for the ways I have broached a topic that, unbeknownst to me until very recently, made certain individuals uncomfortable. House Speaker Paul Ryan urged Franks to resign, saying he found the allegations to be serious and requiring action. Franks is a pro-life defender, working in support of the 20-week pain-capable abortion ban, a bill in defense of conscience rights for healthcare workers who don't want to do abortion, and adoption, serving as co-chair of the House's Adoption Caucus. He also sponsors a bill to ban abortions after the heartbeat is detected.
There will come a day in America when the warm sunlight of life is going to break through these clouds and shine once again on the faces of these little forgotten children of God.
He also demanded defunding Planned Parenthood.
I think that the sands of time should blow over this Capitol dome we stand under before taxpayers are forced to give one more dime of their hard-earned money to this organization called Planned Parenthood, who has promoted the senseless and torturous killing of the most innocent of all human beings for decades.
Now his 15 years here on Capitol Hill will soon be coming to an end.
Franks says no embryos were destroyed in the process he used, but surrogacy critic Jennifer Lal of the Center for Bioethics and Culture tells me she's saddened to hear he chose surrogacy. She says it shows how uncritically most Americans have accepted that medical process. Franks' seat is reliably Republican. He won about 70% of the vote in 2016. Wyatt?
Very concerning news for a lot of pro-lifers. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reporting. Thanks, Jason. One of the women accusing Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore of sexual assault admits to lying in parts of her story. Beverly Young Nelson admits she wrote part of the yearbook message she previously offered as proof, saying she wrote the date so she would remember the location. Moore faces multiple allegations of sexual assault from several years ago. President Trump is supporting Moore in next week's special election. Our anchor and managing editor, Lauren Ashburn, says faith is missing from the national conversation on sexual harassment. Last night, she took part in a conference focusing on what Catholic women can add to the debate.
What I would like to talk about tonight is how women of faith in particular, can shape this conversation.
The panel was hosted by the Catholic Women's Forum here in Washington, D.C. Rebels attack a United Nations base in eastern Congo, killing 14 and wounding 53 others. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls the assault a war crime and expresses his outrage and utter heartbreak. It was the deadliest single attack on a UN mission in recent history. At least 5 Congolese soldiers were also killed. The peacekeepers mainly were from Tanzania. Brexit talks are moving forward after Britain and the European Union reach a deal.
I believe the people should be able to trust that their politicians will put into place what they have determined. And that's exactly what we're doing, and we will be leaving the European Union.
The negotiations now move on to 2 important issues, trade and the future relationship between Britain and the EU. Brexit remains set for March of 2019. Belgium legalized euthanasia 15 years ago. In that time, 15,000 people have been killed, and the numbers continue to skyrocket. According to LaCroix International, in 2003, there were 235 deaths from euthanasia. Last year, there were 2,024, which accounts for 2% of all those who died in the country. The bill was passed as an option for people suffering from serious illness, yet it continues to expand. A protest in Pakistan is one of several across the region following President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And in Jerusalem, 1 man from Gaza is killed and more than 35 Palestinians are injured after clashes with Israeli forces. An official from Bosnia-Herzegovina says his country could be a model for resolving religious tensions in Jerusalem.
Mi u stvari pokazujemo da je moguće naći formulu zajedničkog života.
Denis Zvizdic says his country shows peace is possible. The Bosnian War was an armed conflict that took place in Bosnia and Herzegovina between 1992 and 1995 and included ethnic cleansing. Pope Francis told the official he hopes peace in his land would be consolidated. Pope Francis is considering changing the words in the Our Father. He says in a television interview, the phrase, "lead us not into temptation," is not a good translation since it implies God can lead us to sin. The Holy Father says a better translation is, "do not let us fall into temptation." That phrase is already used in churches in France. Today in Sweden, a Chaldean Catholic church outside Stockholm is dedicated to the Virgin Mary on this Feast of the Immaculate Conception. There are only about 100,000 Catholics in the country, accounting for a little more than 1% of the population. Despite being a tiny minority, Sweden has its first and only cardinal, and EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent Juliet Lindley recently spoke to him.
Our first question to you is about the state of the Catholic Church in Sweden. It's a very multicultural one today. What are the challenges? What are the joys of this?
It's true that the Catholic Church has grown thanks to immigration, above all by refugees from all over the world. But also there are converts of Swedes So we could say that it's a very mixed group of people who live in our churches, and still people are coming, today mostly from Syria and Eritrea as refugees, and people are coming from Ukraine to find work. So that's our constant concern, to try to help them to be integrated into our parishes and help them to feel welcome, to feel that they belong to the church, that they are important for us.
And speaking of perhaps Catholic immigrants who come to Sweden on Friday, upcoming Friday, just south of Stockholm, you're inaugurating a new Chaldean church.
That's true, and it's a very important group in Sweden. Sweden has the biggest group of Chaldeans in Europe, and we also have a bishop from Baghdad who lives in Sweden as apostolic visitator for all Europe. And Södertälje is very proud. The city has received more refugees from Iraq than the United States and Canada together. That's what they say. Up to now, Sweden had a very open policy for refugees. Now the government has changed. But still, people are coming to Sweden, and we are very happy that this church can be used by so many Chaldean Catholics and also other Catholics, because it will also be a Marian shrine for the metropolitan area of Stockholm.
And what is your take on this government move to reduce the number of immigrants?
Well, together with all the other churches, we have protested against this policy, and we are very worried that it's more difficult for families to be reunited. So we do the little we can in order to make people aware of this situation.
You were made a cardinal 6 months ago. How has this first half a year gone? What challenges have you had to face up to, and what have been your satisfactions?
Well, I could say that I was overwhelmed and surprised that there is so much interest in Sweden, even among non-Catholics and non-Christians. Some say now Sweden has a cardinal, because it's something unique. We never had cardinals in our part of the world, and most people are very happy about it and even proud. So I think it has meant that the Catholic Church somehow has become more known, more integrated into society. We're just a little minority outside of the normal life. So for us Catholics in Sweden, I think it's been a great thing.
And for you personally, it's been a big change?
Well, for me, it's a very big change. Originally, I was a Carmelite friar who lived in a very quiet place. Now, I'm a public person. So for me personally, it's a big change, of course.
Thank you. Thank you so very, very, very much. Thank you.
Thank
Such
you.
an honor to have you. Thank you.
Coming up, the DOJ's latest target. We dig into the federal investigation into Planned Parenthood. And the First Lady reveals her family's plan for a Christmas includes a timeless Catholic tradition. Today in history, on December 8, 1941, the United States Congress declares war against Imperial Japan, officially entering World War II. It happened a day after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsbee in for Lauren Ashburn. San Diego becomes the latest area to be hit by wildfires raging through California. The latest exceeds 6 square miles and has damaged at least 65 houses. The blaze broke out Thursday amid dry, hot, and windy conditions that are unusual in the state at this time of the year. In Ventura County, officials say wildfires there have grown to more than 200 square miles and have destroyed 430 buildings. The pro-life movement last night got some very important news. The Department of Justice is investigating Planned Parenthood over the sale of baby body parts. The decision follows a recommendation by a Senate committee in 2016. To weigh in on the investigation is Terry Shilling, Executive Director of the American Principles Project, a conservative organization committed to protecting life and religious liberty. Terry, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Wyatt.
Why is this so important for the pro-life movement, this investigation is happening?
Well, there are two main reasons why it's very important. One, it's a total change from how the Obama administration treated this. Under Obama, David Daleiden was the criminal, and he was the one being prosecuted. with the Trump administration, it's the bad guys that are being prosecuted. The other reason why this is important is because Planned Parenthood receives over $500 million every year from the federal government. And this is a great opportunity to take away that funding and maybe chip away at the 300,000 abortions that they perform every year.
Yeah, and it's certainly putting the spotlight on what Planned Parenthood does on a regular basis. So do you think this DOJ investigation now will be enough reason for Congress to defund Planned Parenthood?
Never underestimate the Democrats' justification for Planned Parenthood. Look, it gives more ammunition for us, and it could bring to light more nefarious activities from Planned Parenthood, but it'll still be a fight, but I think it'll motivate Republicans to go on offense a lot better.
Sure, and like I said, it's letting your average people know, your average American know exactly what those nefarious deeds are.
Exactly, and at the end of the day, what they have been caught on camera doing is just so egregious. And the more Americans that we get to find out about this, the better. They need to be exposed. Every American should know and should watch these videos just to see how evil and despicable what they've been doing is.
So then, Terry, what do you think are the next steps? Where does it go from here?
Well, the next steps is to continue through with the investigation. I know that they have decided to pull the documents, the unredacted documents from the Senate Judiciary's investigation, and hopefully we can get another vote on redirecting the funding from Planned Parenthood, which performs over 300,000 abortions every year, to clinics that don't provide abortions and to clinics that actually give women the care that they need and deserve.
I know there are so many people who are praying for that and hoping that will happen. Terry Shilling, Executive Director of the American Principles Project, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
First Lady Melania Trump talks about her family's Christmas tradition while visiting a children's hospital yesterday in Washington.
Christmas Eve, we have a dinner and we go to midnight mass or Christmas Day mass next day, and then another family dinner, and Christmas on the 25th, Santa comes.
The First Lady also read the Polar Express to the group of children. We learned earlier this year Melania Trump is Catholic. Up next, icing on the cake. We talk with Father Kyle Schnippel, a Catholic priest and contestant on a nationally televised baking show. And that's dedication, a celebration for the National Basilica in Washington, D.C., which is now complete nearly 100 years after construction began.
Davanti all'angelo con un piccolo libro in mano.
Pope Francis reflects on the Immaculate Conception today at the Vatican during his Angelus address. Afterwards, the Holy Father paid tribute to Mary at Rome's Piazza di Spagna. This is the annual tradition marking the start of Rome's holiday season. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsbee in for Lauren Ashburn. It was on this day in 1854, Pope Pius IX proclaimed the Catholic dogma of the Immaculate Conception, that Mary was free of original sin from the moment of her own conception. And it wasn't just the Pope honoring Mary today in Rome. Italian firefighters laid a wreath on the statue of Mary this morning before the Pope blessed it. The statue of Our Lady overlooks the Spanish Steps and stands atop a column nearly 40 feet high. Catholic priests dispense all kinds of advice, including providing marriage counseling, visiting the sick and elderly, and administering the healing that comes from hearing confessions. But a priest in Cincinnati can also provide help in the kitchen. Last night marked the first episode of a nationally televised cooking show, and one of the contestants was a priest. The Great American Baking Show airs Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, 8 p.m. Central on ABC. We're joined now by Father Kyle Schnippel via Skype from Cincinnati. So, Father Kyle, we're sorry to hear that you were eliminated last night. What kind of message do you hope to send by participating in this show?
I think first off, just the priests are real people too. We have our own interests, we have our own hobbies and things, and so often when I worked as vocation director for the Archdiocese, there were questions about, can you still do this as a priest? And well, I think I just answered that in a big way. That yeah, you can still go on a nationally televised baking show even as a priest.
And I understand there was a watch party at St. John Newman, one of the churches where you are the pastor. What are people in your parish saying about your appearance on TV?
Everyone was just really so supportive, and the comments I've got, we were so proud of you. We're so happy that you had this opportunity. Everyone, I think the main comment though has been, so what do you bring into the next parish picnic? Or so now everybody's going to expect me to bring the desserts and things, but it's just. everyone was just so really ecstatic and so happy to join last night for the watch party and to just be a part of it and to see someone they knew on TV, and I think that was quite the experience for them.
So how did you get interested in baking, and why did you want to be on the show?
How did I get interested? I think I remember it from growing up as a kid that my great-grandmother would bring over these tubs of cookies for Christmas. And so it's kind of a bit of a family connection. And a couple years ago for the parish festival, I had a few hours to kill on a Friday afternoon before the festival. I'm like, I can throw something together for the baked goods booth. And that just started me down this path that ended up me being on this show. And you'd never be afraid. I think one of the big things that I've learned is never be afraid to do something on a whim, because you never know where it's going to go and what's going to happen with it.
Sure. Well, you mentioned Christmas this time of year. Of course, lots of people are busy baking to celebrate Christmas. Do you have any advice for bakers?
Don't be afraid. I hear so many people who comment, "Oh, I could never make that. I could never do that." I would have probably said the same thing a year and a half ago. And just find good recipes, follow them, have fun with it. And there's so many things that I ended up throwing in a bin, thrown in the trash because it wasn't up to snuff. But I kept at it, and you learn from the mistakes that you make, and just have fun in the kitchen. I often joke that baking is way cheaper than a therapist, and so it just gives you something to do that's maybe different from your day-to-day life, and it's so great to share the results with people you love, my friends, my family members, and parishioners now too.
Do not be afraid. That goes for baking as well as life in general. Father Kyle
Exactly.
Schnippel, Father Kyle Schnippel of the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. Thanks so much for talking with us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure. God bless.
Finally tonight, a celebration at the largest Catholic church in North America, years in the making. Washington Cardinal Donald Worrell dedicates the Trinity Dome Mosaic this afternoon at the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. The dome is made up of more than 14 million pieces of Venetian glass and covers more than 18,000 feet above the basilica. Cardinal Worrell says the basilica has been a work in progress since the laying of its foundation stone in 1920. Pope Francis blessed part of this project during his visit to the basilica in 2015. Having covered stories, by the way, the Trinity Dome's renovation, it is great to see it all finished. And that wraps up our newscast for tonight. We thank you for watching this week. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsbee. We'll be back on Monday with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.